Hey, greetings everyone, and welcome to episode 100, that's 100 of Plan B Success Podcast. I'm sure you've been enjoying the show as much as I've been producing it. This has been a journey that's been tremendous for me in terms of learning, application, getting introduced to people around the world, learning about them, getting inspired, being inspiring to some of my listeners as well as a part of this journey. If you're getting on this journey right now, make sure you go out and check all the other 99 episodes that are out there besides this one on Plan B Success on your favorite podcasting platform. Or you could go to planb.live or rajivmudumba.com and check the same content out there as well. And by the way, if you do enjoy this content, please make it a point to go to your favorite podcasting platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts or any other platform that's out there, and do leave a review and a comment as to what you love about this podcast. And of course, do subscribe, do keep coming back, tell your friends and family and others who could benefit from this content that's out there for your benefit, for their benefit, and let them all subscribe as well. Today, we have an entrepreneur and somebody who's been in the media for a very long time amongst us. Kelly Glover, the CEO of Talent Squad. It's a podcast booking and publicity agency, but she brings about 2 decades of working in the media as a talent agent, a radio host, a podcast producer, and a celebrity interviewer. She's got a whole set of experiences that she can share in terms of strategizing as a marketer, acting like a publicist, teaching business secrets as to how to get your message out there, and also much more about building brands. So, Kelly, welcome aboard.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell in your own words a little bit about yourself and your journey so far?
Sure. So I run the Talent Squad, and we are a podcast guest booking agency. So we book podcast tours for entrepreneurs and authors. But I didn't start there. I actually started in Hollywood in media and entertainment. I went to college in Ohio and did the internships doing the red carpets for Miramax, ended up in radio, and from radio ended up in podcasting. So it's been 20 years. When I started, podcasts weren't even invented. And a lot of things weren't even invented that I learned in university, which is the way of the world these days. So I've ended up starting a business in something that didn't exist when I went to university. So that's pretty amazing for a plan B, I would say.
Awesome. So, you've seen podcasting grow as a medium over the last several years. So what would be that one difference that you generally see when it began versus now?
So when I started in 2007, I was on radio, and we took the radio show off the logger after it went live, took out the songs, and took out the commercials. So really, it was a radio show without music and without commercials, just the talking parts. And that was back in the day when it was iPods and just any audio on the device. And now I think that everyone has a podcast. So it seems there's 750,000 podcasts
right
at the moment. So I think, and back then the process was really long. It was like 6 pages of instructions. It was so hard. Good luck if it worked. It took hours. And now you can record something on your phone if you want and have it live within minutes. So it's gone from professional media where you had to be a chosen one and trained to get in the media, in radio and be a few, and broadcast to the broad audience, to niche audience where everybody is their own media outlet, and you don't have to have the entire country to see you or hear you. You can have 100 people talking about a podcast about mushrooms, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going from broad to niche and public, the chosen few, to the many. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've seen is, I've been following a few people myself as I began my journey into podcasting, and some of them I've seen have really grown pretty tremendously. Like, there are some podcasts that I've seen have started garnering about 100,000 plus views per month in about 6 months since their launch. At the same time, there are others who are struggling with about maybe 5,000, 6,000, or 10,000 views a month. So what do you think are these people not doing right in order to get the kind of exposure that they need to?
So I think there's a lot in that. So I think that where did they start? Did they already have their audience? Did they already have their personal brand in order? And what's their intention? So I think you said 100,000 and 5,000, but in the word struggling, but it depends what the goal is. So if your goal is to make money from the actual show, then that's a business in itself, and making money from that, advertisers and listeners, that's volume as opposed to targeting and specific. If you've got 5,000 people listening to your show and you talk to dentists, well, that's hugely specific. They're all in your market. They're looking for a specific thing. And if you have a product point of $1,000 and one person out of that 5,000 buys your product a month, well, that turns into a $12,000 show. If you've got 100,000 listeners and you're going for advertising, and that's a CPM model, which is $25 per 1,000 listeners, just for sake of an example, that's 4,000 people to make $100. So I think it's not whether someone's doing right or wrong. It's what the goal is, where they're starting and where they're starting from. So it's a case by case basis. And I think that's the thing about podcasting is we don't know what we don't know. And we think, oh, we're still thinking on the old model of the most listeners to get the most money because that's where advertising is. But I think it's different. So like Apple, I say, think differently.
So, for someone who's, let's say, trying to grow an audience, what would be the suggested measures to do that?
But I think the question is, why are you wanting to grow the audience? Who is your audience? And what do you want them to do? What are you doing in the rest? I don't know. It's answering a question by asking more questions. And that is to pinpoint where the issue is, because it's not just you have to do this. It's what do you have to do in addition to what you're already doing? Because just putting it's not build it and they will come. But there is an element of that in the content of, again, who are you speaking to and what do you want them to do as a result? Like, what is the content, and is your content offering a solution to the people? Because podcasts, you don't accidentally find a podcast. You're not scrolling through Instagram, a podcast. So it's people are actively searching for solutions to their problems. So are you solving that problem, and who? And if so, who are you getting your podcast in front of them, or how are you telling it? How are you telling them that you have a show? So there's a number of things. And are you speaking to who you're already speaking to, your audience? Are you serving those people, or are you looking for people that have never met you? And I also invite you to reverse engineer. If that was you, how do you find podcasts?
Right. Absolutely.
Is it referral? Okay, well then you need to get people speaking about your podcast. Maybe you need to go on other podcasts, and if it's awareness that you exist, if nobody knows you exist, well, they need to find out what problem you solve, the know, like, and trust factor, for them to put that 30 minutes into, I'm going to listen to this show.
Sure.
So there's a number of things, yeah.
So there's also this thing about guests, right? So one of the things that I've been seeing, for instance, is if there's one guest on the circuit right now doing the rounds of podcasting, you'll see the same guest show up again and again and again on probably, let's say, a dozen podcasts. Of course, it depends on who the interviewer is and what flavor or what aspect of the guest are they unraveling. But when there's that kind of exposure, where it's the same guest doing a circuit of podcasts, what do you think are the positives and the negatives there?
Yeah, so I think that, again, there's 750,000 podcasts. If you are able to do the circuit and hit every podcast, good luck. Every podcast is its own niche. And then also it is not everybody listens to every podcast. So I think, we call it a podcast tour at the Talent Squad. So it's not a one and done. You don't go on one podcast and go, I've done the podcast now. That's it. You don't put one ad out. You put that ad out everywhere, because, well, not everywhere, but to your target market where they're watching or listening. So I think that I think it's fine because not everyone's listening to every podcast, and you need to say something different on every podcast and add different value. So if you think about people that you like as well, like Gary Vaynerchuk, I will listen to him for hours saying the same things in different ways because I like him. I get value out of him every time. So I think that, no, I don't. It's only harmful if you're saying the same thing to the same people every time. But are people listening to 50 I don't listen to 50 separate podcasts. It's impossible. I mean, I do because I'm an agent. I listen to them all. But I don't listen to every episode of every podcast. So I don't think it's harmful. And I think you said you see the same people. Well, that's a good thing. So like, oh, I've seen that people. What are they up to? They're active. They've got something to say. They're doing things. So you're noticing them. So it's working. So I think that, again, like for a media tour, a book tour, getting exposure, it's not a one and done doing one stop. It's multiple stops. As long as they are relevant to you, to your audience and your topic, I think it's great because it's part of a PR strategy, and that's multiple, not one.
So let me ask you another question. A lot of people that I've seen on the podcasting circuit, a lot of podcasts believe that the more influential the guest, the growth will be that much higher for them. In that kind of market, what would be your advice to the underdog?
I think, so let's use Gary Vaynerchuk as an example because I think everybody knows him. I listen to Vaynerchuk because I like him. And if I see him on a podcast, I'm not going to go, oh, I'm going to listen to that because that Gary Vaynerchuk's on there. Even if I do, I'm listening for that guest. And what that does is bring me awareness to that person. I think it's more about elevating their profile that they can get that level of person. But you run the risk of them going there for that guest and then going away unless you do something amazing. What it does is elevate by association. But if you think about shows that you like, let's use talk shows for an example. I watch Jimmy Fallon because I like Jimmy Fallon and who Jimmy Fallon interviews. I don't go there because, X guest is on that show tonight. You know what I mean? So I think it's great, but I don't think having the biggest, most important celebrity on your show is going to keep people coming back unless you have something to say, unless they relate to you. And who's the guest going to be the week after? Like they might have gone there because of Vaynerchuk, but what are you going to do for the other 51 episodes? Right. So I don't think, yes, it's interesting. Yes, it's a win. Yes, it proves that you can get someone awesome on your show. That's great. Then what? So it's not the golden solution to, I'm going to have this person on the show and I'm going to go from 2 downloads to 2 million and that's it. I think it's a different play to that. Everyone's looking for the golden bullet. Podcasting is not that. It's a long play.
Awesome.
It's a long play. Any show that goes on the air that's even successful now had to find their audience. And then they had to, like, think of TV shows. So many TV shows on that. No, Breaking Bad. No one knew about that show for ages. Lizzo with her songs. She had that song out for years before it went there. So you can create something, but it doesn't mean you're going to be a hit overnight and go from 0 to 2 million listeners and you've made it.
So consistency is the name of the game.
It's consistency, but also it's audience. You can put a great show out that's amazing, but if nobody knows about it, it's always like a so what, who cares scenario.
Right.
And if you look at the people that are successful, because people are, I want to be like Mark Maron. Well, how many Mark Marons are there? And is that really you? So I think there needs to be a little bit of a dose of realism and also purpose. Like everyone wants to be a celebrity. I get it. But the most is not the most effective in it. It's not what it seems all the time, you know?
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
So let's reflect back a little bit on your career, your background. So when you look back at your life, you've done multiple things. You've been an interviewer, you've been in the media, you've helped people brand, all of these things. When you look back at your own career, what stands out to you as high points and low points?
Oh, high points and low points. Well, I think there's professional high points and personal low points as well. Everyone these days are talking about the hustle. Mm-hmm. And again, it's only in retrospect that you're like, oh yeah, I did that. I mean, I was at the point when I was in Los Angeles working at Hollywood Video And, I had one barbecue chicken to survive on and Maggi noodles for a week, and I had to walk because I couldn't even get the bus. You know what I mean? Everyone's been, maybe not everyone, maybe not these days, but I think everybody has their struggle. And I don't look at that and think that was a bad time. I think, wow, I made it to Hollywood. I had my degree, and that was a pivot moment that you're talking about. And I went, forget this. I can't get a job at an agency. I'm going to London. And then I worked for Miramax that I'd interned for already. So sometimes from the low points come the high points. So it's, what are you prepared to do, and when are you ready to cut and run, and when do you need to stay the course? So I think there's a lot of things to it. But yeah, I guess interviewing celebrities on the red carpet, that is, well, it seems great, and it is, and it's prestigious. Also, the lessons from that aren't, the high point isn't, oh, I interviewed Oscar winners. The high point is I learned how to break the tape, and I put the work in to how to interview someone that gets interviewed by thousands of people all the time, to be able to ask the right questions to get the result you want. So I think when you look at someone else's story from the outside of their achievement, the actual concrete achievement sometimes is different than what you think.
And then how do you, it's also about turning what has come through to you as let's say a high point. Low points, I get it, but high points, and how do you capitalize on it going forward?
Yeah, so the high point sometimes is, oh my God, I got my first client when I opened my agency. That's not interviewing John Travolta, but to me, holy cow. Or when you hit 6 figures, oh my gosh. It's not necessarily about the money, like I made X dollars. It's about, I've gone from the point of working for somebody else to all these people actually gave me money to do the thing, and I'm doing it. So there's, I think, evidence in the effort, I think, is the high point. So yeah, that was one for me. It's not the dollar point. It's what people have trusted in me to do, and I'm actually doing it.
Awesome.
So yeah, there's a lot of, you can say you're an entrepreneur, and a lot of people get funding, but where's the evidence?
Yes. And then let's talk a little bit about Talent Squad. How long have you had it, and what do you do through Talent Squad?
Yeah, so I launched in 2017 after having been a senior podcast producer, producing branded mid-6-figure branded podcasts for a network. And I kept doing contract work, and the contracts will come to an end. And I was at the point where I'd been doing this I've been in media and entertainment since 2001. So I had a track record of, what would it be by then, 16 years at the time. So I knew my stuff, and I was a practitioner, and I went, you know what? I want to be in charge. I'm sick of being at the behest of somebody else making the decisions of my income. So I want to make my own decisions. So I started that in 2017. And again, that's going from essentially the top of your field, where you just have to show up and do the work, to, okay, I need to get clients now. I've got no clients. Yes, I've booked 2,000 interviews and I've done this, but now I have to convince somebody to pay me to do it. So that was the point of the Talent Squad. We're at 3 years now. Yeah, so we've gone from, and it's also going from 0 to 6 figures to multi-6 figures and beyond. I suppose that is the trajectory of the Talent Squad and running your own business. You quickly realize, okay, I know how to do the thing, but now I have to learn the thing of, I need structures, and I need systems, and I have to do accounting, and I have to do sales, and it's the discovery and learning how to run a business.
And what are the services you provide through Talent Squad?
So we book entrepreneurs and authors on podcast tours. So people come to us and they want to do a podcast tour, go on multiple podcasts to speak to their ideal audience, use it as part of their PR strategy. So we source, vet, pitch, and book people on shows. So you get an email saying, hey, here's the show. And then they just have to go on the show. They don't have to do all the legwork up front. And we work on all the positioning for that as well. So a lot of people know that they're an expert in their field. They know the thing, but they can't identify in themselves what makes them interesting, or it's so easy to them. What most people don't know, they know so naturally and it's implicit that they can't identify that that's something they need to talk about because it's almost too simple for them. So it's breaking down that expertise and putting it into topics and talking points and, angles, all that stuff, so they can go on the show and talk to the people about that. So it's all the packaging, positioning, messaging that goes into the strategy, because it's not just about, hey, I need to get on a podcast and talk about it. It's, who am I talking to? What do they want to do as a result? What am I talking about? What's the payoff from that? Like, yeah, I can go on a show, but what's someone going to do after it? And what am I going to do to leverage the strategy? So there's a lot more than people think, but it's the best, You go on a podcast, expert status, exposure, relationships. You get time in the audience's ear, SEO. Yeah.
So is this more like is there a retainer with you guys and then you showcase people in a certain number of podcasts? How does this work?
Yeah, so it's a podcast tour. So it's a certain number of podcasts. So for example, someone might want to do a 12-stop tour or a 20-stop tour. And then so it's that amount of bookings. So it's not necessarily a monthly retainer of, oh, you have to do X podcasts a month for the rest of forever. We're finding, and again, this is in the learning of a monthly retainer model to a tour model. And that is, we're finding people kind of want to test it. It's new. I don't know how many I can do. And also a tour helps if you want to batch. A lot of entrepreneurs like batching, where they just want to do it at a certain, like maybe they want to do 12 podcasts a quarter, and they want to do it at one time, or they might have a book launch or a product launch that they're supporting. So we find that that's the best, or that seems to be what suits our clients the most.
All right. How are you doing? How's the business doing?
Yeah, it's amazing. We have all types of clients. And actually, this week, the iHeart Podcast Awards were on in Los Angeles. And it was so great to see that one of the shows that we booked our clients on won and beat Oprah's show. So
Awesome.
Talk about celebrities. The show beat Why Won't You Date Me, Nicole Byer. That's a show that we booked one of our clients on, which is amazing. She hosts that Nailed It on Netflix, which I love her. She's so funny. So yeah, the clients are doing great, but they're also, they've got good content. They've got great one sheets. They've got great online press kits. They're getting on the show. They're nailing the interview, and then they're leveraging the interview. So it's great to see success of us getting people there, but them executing on it and leveraging it once they've been there too.
So, you've been in business for about 3 years with Talent Squad. So let's talk about that year one. What were some of the struggles and challenges that you went through?
I think it feels like being a Tasmanian devil, and I'm over here, I'm over there, I'm not really sure. So it's just figuring it out. And where you start is not where you finish. So deciding to launch, picking a date for launch, jumping in, getting that first client. And then it was like I said, the model has changed on our offer, and just knowing you'll probably never nail it, or it's not going to be static. So I'm like, I just need to figure out the pricing. I just need to figure out the offer. But knowing that you'll never figure it out, because once you figure it out, it's always evolving. So I guess the struggle is figuring it out to a point, but then knowing that you'll never figure it out. Okay. So it's like, you can't go to the gym once and be in shape and fit for the rest of your life. You can't eat a salad sandwich and think that that's going to be forever. And I think heading into entrepreneur, I thought, once I nail it, I'm fine. I just have to keep doing it. And it's not that way. So it was a struggle, but now it's not, because I understand that. And then, the next thing's the struggle. Like,
right.
How do you do all? Yeah.
So, one of the things that I see, and I want to get your perspective on this, especially with guests and podcasts. So when I look at the lay of the land, yes, it's all, pretty virgin territory or new territory. It's still forming, the processes, the systems, all are in the making. One is guests out there trying to find their own shows. Either they get into Facebook groups, they try to find who's got a podcast, how to get on it, all of that. The second is, what you mentioned, agencies like yours who come to the rescue of people who want to become experts or authors or, businessmen. And then one is you're helping them figure out their message. On the other end, you're going out and finding podcasts that they could be in. The third is, it's still the same thing, but, then there are podcasts that are seeking out guests, and I've seen podcasts that are seeking out guests, and then they're putting a charge on it. I'm going to feature you as a guest on my podcast, and I've seen where it could range from $20 per episode all the way to about $2,000 an episode. So when you look at the lay of the land, it's all over the place. And then there are also, agencies like yours who are seeking podcasters and connecting guests, and that's where the transaction stops. While there are also agencies out there that are willing to share part of the revenue that they make from the guests with the podcast that they're featuring them on. So when you look at all this, what are your thoughts? How's this industry going to mature as time passes by?
I think there'll be a correcting of the industry, and everything you've said, yes, I have seen it in the last 3 years. And again, talking about where you go in is not where it ends up. So I've seen shows that I've booked guests on and now they charge $5,000. So you've said $2,000, and I know that there's a specific show that charges $5,000. So with us, we look at podcasting at the Talent Squad as earned media and not pay for play. So we don't book or we don't pitch shows where it costs money, because then to us that's an advertorial.
Right.
So there's that element of podcasting. Now, does someone have the right to do that? Absolutely. Do I understand it? Yes. But as a booking agency anchored in PR and earned media, that's not something that we look to book our clients on. With regards to what was the other? Tell me some of the other things you've said. So shows. So people going to Facebook groups to find people sourcing shows on their own. Absolutely fine. Lots of people do DIY NPR and try to get media. Absolutely makes sense. I would just say be professional in your outreach and make sure you know what you're doing, because if you reach out in a non-professional way, then that can actually damage your brand. So if you're doing that, it's just understanding that you need to have your personal brand in order and be prepared for the media before you do that media outreach. And then with regards to shows looking for guests, I think there's an element to laziness in some of this. Like, hey, I'm looking for guests. Do you want to be a guest on my show?
Right.
Well, I think you need to be a bit more specific on that. And I think that you should be outreaching people instead of just putting an ad up, a general ad, and just accepting people. So I think that's a little bit of a beginning tactic, which is fine. Start where you are and get guests. But I'm a little bit wary of a show that's like, hey, I need guests, blanket, who wants to be on my show? I'd be a bit more discerning on that. And I invite people to be discerning on picking their guests and picking their shows and picking their agencies. And if you're doing it, pitching yourself, getting a team member to pitch you, getting a virtual assistant to pitch you, or getting an agency to pitch you. Because it's not about just getting on a podcast. It's all the prep in advance of that with your messaging, your positioning, the whole personal branding, and then being prepared for the recording as well. So I think the industry has professionalized and also deprofessionalized by who's coming and going, yeah, I can get you booked on a podcast, but how are they pitching you? Is it a copy and paste email? Who are they pitching? Any random show? I had a podcast years ago that I haven't done an episode in maybe 4 years. I still get pitched. I haven't looked at when the episode was, that's bad, like the worst. Or people pitching shows, but haven't have guests on the show. Have you not listened to the show? So it's doing the due diligence. The biggest complaint that podcast hosts have is getting pitched by people that haven't listened to an episode, don't understand the show, haven't looked at the back catalogue. So it's putting in the work.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
For podcasters, one is we talked about advertising, one is we talked about hyper-local advertising, working with your guests in terms of anything that they're pitching and all that. What would you say are some of the ways to monetize your podcast? As
a guest or a host?
As a host.
I think if you're monetizing your podcast is a business. So are you in the business of podcasting, or are you in the business as being a practitioner? Somebody else said that. I forget who. I need to figure out who that is. That will make me a better guest. So I think that's the point. So is your podcast the business, or are you a business person that has a podcast?
Right. And you're right.
And like people want to make money out of it, But I think that I'm going to have a podcast, I'm going to make money is a little bit of a faulty thought, and you need to look at that deeper. Not every podcast, the purpose does not have to be to make money. And then if you're saying make money, you need to quantify that. Is that $1 million? Or is that covering the cost of production? So what's the expectation on that? And why do you want to make money? Is it because you feel like you need to earn money because of the hours that you're putting in? So I think, again, like there's so many questions, but that's what it really is. It comes back to why.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're right. With all the niches and micro niches, there are both kinds of people. There are people that do it for the pleasure of it, and there are people that are looking at it as a launching pad to start a business and go down different paths. Whether it's building listeners, whether it's building a community, whether it's going into online courses, doing other things in and around podcasting. So there are multiple ways people are trying to skin the cat, so to speak.
I think you know what it is? I think it's instant or direct monetization is what I'm actually talking about, because podcasting is a long play. So you can monetize if someone listens to you. And I always, again, reverse engineer, and using Amy Porterfield as an example. So I bought one of her courses. They're like $1,200. So I didn't just hear her on a podcast or read a blog post and then go and buy that course. I would have heard the episode, heard another episode, had a look at the face. Now I've liked her on Facebook. I've watched the Facebook. I've liked her on Instagram. I've watched there. I might have, I've gone through this whole thing. And then maybe a year later, I've gone and bought that $1,200 course because I know her now. And now I've known her for a year. I don't know her, but that's how people feel. I've had a relationship with her for a year. So I think is that monetizing your podcast? Kinda. Is it getting X dollars from somebody listening to one episode? No. So I think the monetization or making money from something comes in a different way, and it's not instant or direct, like I listened to that, then I did this. So I think that's why I think thinking in a different way, and I keep coming back to you with questions, because I think that's what this is. It's not a listen to an episode for 30 minutes, see a result of $1,200. It's not how it works.
Right. The long play that you talked about.
Yeah. So I think, can you monetize? Yes. And so it's the value, it can often be the value of a client. You know what I mean? And the know, like, and trust factor. And the value is in SEO. You do a podcast episode, whether you're a guest or a host, you then put that in a blog post. That blog post has the keywords. You show up in Google, someone finds you that way. So they're searching for something and you come up in your episode or in somebody else's episode. But is that them listening to an episode and making, $25 for 100 people listening? No. Is it valuable? And are you making money? Yeah. And is that $1,200 client? Yes. So, but that's one person, $1,200. That's not a million people for, you know what I mean? What do you think?
Yes. No, I agree. I think it's, today it's all about relationships. It's all about trust. And in order to build that relationship and trust, it's a long play. And it's not just one thing. Like you say, you have a podcast and you think you're going to build relationships with people. Probably not. You need to do it in a multi-channel fashion. You need to be out on your social media. You need to be preaching value all the time. And that value needs to make a difference in somebody's life before they can commit to the dollars for more from you.
Yeah, and I think the real value is in building your personal brand. People don't like the term personal brand, and I think really it just means reputation. So if you're looking at that, a podcast is a great way as a host and guest to get your personal brand out there, because you're getting your message out there. They're hearing your voice, so they get an idea of your energy and your attitude, and you're spending 30 minutes, which is much more than just seeing a headline, scrolling through, seeing a photo, so you get to spend time with people. Then you're getting the content from that. Oftentimes you can get video from that. You're getting a relationship. And also, here's something that people don't necessarily, I think they're thinking about it more now than they used to. You're talking about the listener, which most people do. Like, everyone thinks, I need to have a podcast, I need to have listeners, I need to make money off the listeners listening to the content. No. What about the relationship that you were just speaking about? What about the guest? The guest could end up being your client. That's the $1,200 client for a course and or per month, whatever the model is. So doing that interview, because you've then got a one-on-one relationship with that person, that's one person, one conversion, one client. as opposed to 1 million clients. So I think thinking about the payoff in that way.
Sure, absolutely. Makes sense. So what's up for the new decade? What are the plans for the new decade? What's coming up?
Okay, so this podcast is being recorded in January 2020. Looking at January 2030, who knows? You'd need a time machine, because even just looking back in the last 3 years, you'd need a time machine. So all the big brands are coming in. It's moved from branded podcasts, like we're all in true crime at the moment. Everyone's coming in and doing all their DIY, but also the big Hollywood agencies and even in the last 3 years at conferences, I've seen Hollywood not be there to them literally fly across the country from Los Angeles media agencies all the way to Florida in the middle of summertime in Orlando showing up. So I think that for podcasting, it's a content machine and it's a discovery in the way that blogging and YouTube was. So all the media companies are coming in and they're buying up podcasts or discovering people so they can get content to make other content from it, because it's a content goldmine.
Right.
And I think there's going to be the deep professionalization and deprofessionalization, which we've seen in the booking industry, because it's so accessible to everybody. That changes the game. So you know what? I'm not an oracle. I don't have the answer. I'm the same as you. I'm watching on like everybody else going, okay, guys, where's this going to end up?
Right. From a business standpoint, for your business, do you have any plans for the next couple of years? Anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, we do, but we're a boutique agency. So we are a high touch client working with personal brands and people. So I think a lot of everyone, and I think this is a little bit like podcasting, everybody's looking to scale. They want the most clients and the most bookings, but we are not doing it in that way. We look after a small roster of clients. So I think it's continuing to serve our clients in the best way possible and just keep it boutique with the quality and like what we're doing. Like I don't want to have 200 clients that I can't service and don't know every podcast that they're being on. I'm up in your beeswax. Like I enjoy knowing what you're doing and your success and listening to your episodes and knowing exactly where you've been booked. So I want to keep it small while getting bigger in the value and the delivery.
Awesome. So Kelly, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us today. But before I wind up, I'd like to have you give one takeaway for our listeners, whether it's guests or podcasters. What would you like to say to them?
I think ask questions. Don't like really reverse engineer and ask yourself, what am I trying to do here? Who am I talking to? And what do I want them to do? Because we can all start a podcast, or we can all go as a guest on podcast, but winging it is a waste, And also, if you're putting time and effort into something, it's about doing that research up front so you've got realistic expectations so you can go all in and not be disappointed.
Sure.
So if you know what you're doing, so ask all the questions to really know what you're doing. So you have a realistic expectation of where you're going, and then you can just do it and commit.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. This has been a pleasure having you on the show. Lots to learn from you. I look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, I hope you loved that episode. That was our episode 100. It's been a tremendous journey, getting to know so many people out there, not just the guests, but you, the listeners as well, and providing so much of inspiring content that can help you on your journey of success, your journey of trials and errors, your journey to make it to the top. Make sure you go and subscribe to Plan B Success Podcast on your favorite podcasting platform, or check out planb.live or rajivmudumba.com to check out all the other episodes that are out there. And do tell a friend, do tell somebody that you think can benefit from this content so they can go and subscribe as well. Keep subscribed, keep enjoying the content, make sure you comment, review, and leave a rating. Thank you very much.